Crowdfunded board games are huge right now. It is Q4 2023, full stop. They are in full swing right now. They are going strong, and there are a ton of brand new campaigns to talk about. Some indie highlights I want to talk to you guys about. There are things that are launching just today at time of this video release. So if you subscribed, you know about that. If not, you're a little late to the party. Subscribe if you haven't, but we're gonna get into it right now. Now, this first thing I want to show is actually something I'm taking from Alex from Board Game Co. Not in what he is showing, but in kind of how he styles his videos. So before he goes like full hype train and tells you all these cool games, shows you all this awesome stuff, he gives you a little kind of like purposeful first game to kind of highlight for a particular reason. I'm going to kind of actually steal that from him because I think it's a great idea, though what I'm covering and like what I'm focused on that first one, it's going to have a different message each time. For today, it's Firefighters on Duty, the board game. This is something I showed you at Essence Spiel, and we're actually going to go back to that video briefly because I have a little bit of a message about it. It is by Artipia Games. I hope I'm saying that right. They have done quite a few. This is their 20th crowdfunded campaign just on Kickstarter, which is super impressive, and they actually deliver their games. Imagine that. They're a company that actually makes games and delivers games, and people seem to love what they make. Now, Firefighters on Duty is a very interesting game, which we'll talk about shortly, but before, let's do some numbers. It's 53,600 raised, about 787 backers, and 16 days to go. Again, this is at time of recording, which is soon before I release it to you guys, so your numbers will be a little bit different. I'm sure they'll be a little bit higher, right? So this will have quite a bit to go. It's actually a little bit of a longer campaign. But it was a 20,000 goal and 53,000 raised, which isn't like a huge amount. So let's first talk about the game and then talk about the campaign. Just kind of a real quick rapid fire. So this game is essentially a board control game. Again, I don't know if there's a specific genre for that. If there is, let me know. But essentially, think of it kind of like a pandemic kind of thing, right? So like the board game, not the pandemic. And so in this, you have essentially all these events that happen on this map. The map is based off of these different scenarios, so you set them up differently each time. And you're trying to manage it. So you're trying to manage all the distress calls and fires and different things that can happen, different events. Sometimes you're going in blind. You don't know exactly where you're going to get on the call, and then you have to kind of react to it. So you have essentially your firefighters and their like water dice and some tools that you can use. You see some of the different scenarios. And again, they're just kind of basing things here, the scenario objective on each one. There's special rules in each one. So it varies and changes and stuff. I think it looks like a very good board control style game here. And again, I don't know if that's the right genre or if there is a genre word for it. If there is, do let me know. I would love to hear that, or what you would call this in the comments, where things happen on the board and you're trying to manage them from happening and like deal with it, if that makes sense. That kind of explains, I think, every game. Hopefully, what I'm describing works for you guys. But you just distribute your resources and use them in tandem with each other, and as you can see, you do all these different things. It actually is a pretty cool idea. It's a pretty cool theme. I think everybody can be on board for a firefighter theme, and it looks actually like quite a bit of quality. Now, there are two versions. There's the Kickstarter version and what'll be on retail. The difference will be two things that they listed quite a bit. And then also, if you get this Kickstarter edition, there's actually more. You get this like tow truck mini expansion for free, right? So you get that. And then, of course, you get like stretch goals and stuff like that. There are add-ons where you can get additional city tiles and whatnot to do more stuff with. And as you can see, the stretch goals are adding more events and stuff like that as well. Hazards, like underground fires, those sound like you deal with them differently than otherwise, right? So it lists the whole thing here. You always get intense and fun gameplay. I think that should be on top, personally. First of all, because it should set the baseline, not the last thing I read, but the first thing. You're always going to get a great game. Like, that's a good message to have, not dual layer boards. But then they separate the meeples into three different ones. It's really, you get silkscreen meeples for the civilian, injured, and firefighters, and you get the dual layer vehicle boards, which is like your main board. And that's really the Kickstarter edition. Again, plus like stretch goals and stuff like that. So that's what you're getting there. And it lists a whole bunch of different things. There's a 72-hour for that fire truck expansion. And then, of course, reviews and whatnot. Now, the thing I wanted to point out here, especially now that we see this Essence Spiel thing, is that a lot of companies like this are just passionate about making board games and not necessarily about making like the most money ever. And so you're going to see that in just how they celebrate their game and how they feel about their game and how they act about their game. So you get some companies that just like make everything and then, you know, send it out to everybody and then, you know, try and get as much and all that kind of stuff. These, I think, are acted a little bit differently. So, for instance, here they are at Essen Spiel. This is a picture on Board Game Geek. But you see there were people that dressed up as firefighter stuff. And so they had all the little, you know, doodads. And they had this big, giant, like, games worth here on this gigantic table. In fact, if I go over here to my video, you're going to see they had a giant statue of a firefighter there as well. This type of area in Essen Spiel, this type of focus on their game, the celebration of it with the stuff like the actual firefighter and whatnot there, that doesn't, and as you can see, everything's giant. The dice are giant, everything's big, right? They're celebrating the game. And really what that shows is that they're putting a lot of money in there. This 53,000, I wonder if right now, if that would even break even between actually making and developing the game and their artists and all the costs there, plus going to Essen Spiel and doing all that. What makes them work is they have a whole bunch of games that they do, right? They've done 20 campaigns now, and that they aren't focused on making a bajillion bucks off of this. They're focused on making a great game for you. So I wanted to point that out, not to say that I think this is a risk, because they've delivered all of their other games as far as I can tell. They're well regarded. I think you're a safe back. I just wanted to point out that not everybody's making bank on board games. Don't think that's the case. It's definitely not. That is definitely the far exception to the normal rule. Okay, so moving on from that, we've got The Old King's Crown, a tale of royalty, rebels, and ruses. Well, it's really just Old King's Crown. I don't know why they add like this whole big thing here. It just seems like a lot. And as you can see, they don't even like put it like elsewhere. Kind of funny. Anyway, almost 500,000 raised, over 500,000 raised, almost 6,000 backers, and so 61 hours to go. So this is kind of a last reminder. It won't be on another news video, probably. The next news video will probably be after it's over. But again, everything is linked down in the description below. This has gorgeous art. It really, really does. It also has no stretch goals. This is just, they're offering the game. It is what it is. If you like it, you can get it. If it looks interesting to you, you should support them. Base game is about $65 converted currently, and 107 for the Wild Kingdom expansion, and then the all-in is about 125. It's pretty cheap for an all-in, and it looks like it adds a lot of different modules and gameplay and stuff like that. I've explained this more in a previous news video, so I'm not going to go over it huge now. I did a pretty in-depth look at it, all things considered, in the first one that I covered on it. So you can feel free to check out my previous news videos if you need to on that. But beautiful art. It looks great. It looks premium. I appreciate that. I appreciate how they're running the campaign. It looks good to me. Next up, we have Star of Akarios 1.5 plus new content. This is almost over. Again, 3 days left at time of recording. Over 600,000 raised, 3,491 backers. Let's see how that split is, because this is a reprint. And it's always interesting to hear how the 1.5 does. So if we go to the rewards here, you can see that 348 people are getting the gameplay pledge. 640 are getting the everything new. 221 are getting just the base game again. 1,002 are getting everything new. And then the ultimate pledge 230 and the all-in pledge 328. So again, everybody that has this game is wanting more of it, right? The gameplay pledge here is pretty high, definitely, but the everything new and the everything new here, right? Gameplay versus just all of it, huge. 1,002 and then 640. So by far ahead of it. And I think that's interesting. It shows that it's not necessarily getting a huge new audience per se, which means they did great finding their audience the first time. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I don't think it means that they failed to expand their audience. These games have a certain audience, and that is what they are. Now, it's a healthy adoption, right? They're in the 200s and all that. I had 348 gameplay pledge there. I think all that's great, but the people that have it want more of it. And I think that tells quite a bit that they definitely want the 1.5. So I think that's awesome, actually. I think that's great. Again, for the most part, people go to the big one. That doesn't surprise me at all that that's at least a third higher than the rest of it. It's just kind of how things work. It's an expensive hobby, and typically the people that are going for it want it all. There's also stretch pay. I'm going to have a whole video on that in the future. Stay tuned for that. I've been diving in fairly deep to it and interested to share my thoughts on it. So anyway, yeah, that obviously helps, right? Because then it says $40 a month. $40 a month is still pretty big. I mean, considering people like to you know, bandwagon on password sharing Netflix back in the day when they allowed that. So that is quite a bit. But I mean, again, most of us can probably put in the $40 for our favorite hobby. So that kind of makes sense. And there is some new stuff too. I mean, it's actually pretty good. What's new 1.5, right? They got the revised rule book, reworked space exploration, revised scenario booklet, rebalanced space combat, unique starting loadouts, world explanation. It says 1.5, but really it's almost like what a 2.0 would be to a 1.0, in my opinion. They did a very hefty change. It's not just all, oh, we moved around some symbols on some cards, right? It's pretty big. So it's almost like, I guess a 1.5 works. Either way, it's a lot more than just a rulebook reprint. And so we have Gates of Niflheim. It's at 66,628 backers. Again, one of those things I was talking about, very much a passion project where these people have delivered their games, they do good on it, and the people who do end up getting it seem to love it, which is awesome. If we go to rewards here, you're going to see that the deluxe is $145, and whereas the base set, you can do a print and play, you can do a travel set, but just the regular box set is about 56. So not too much difference, right? I mean, it's you know, I guess a little bit over half, but then of course you get all the different minis and stuff like that. This one you don't get any miniatures. So that's kind of where that premium cost comes from. It is interesting that they put all the stretch goals here. Like for instance, this has to, they're farther away from this and they've raised total. So obviously they won't get all of these probably, but it's kind of interesting that they're showing off, you know, everything that could have been, or maybe will be in the Pledge Manager as an add-on, who knows. It'd be kind of interesting. Ideally, if they've made the sculpt and all that, right, like if they've worked on this, it'd be nice to see that still come to fruition in some way, shape, or form, I feel. Next up, DCeased has a new expansion. They are almost at 1 million. And yes, they're still not at 1 million. This is definitely a lower key here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the IP here in a bit. 7,000 backers raised. It's still about $2,000. Not a whole lot of people have come in at $1 since then. So this is people increasing their stuff. With about 5,000 people have backed and still 9 days to go. So expect 2, maybe even 3 more expansions in some way, shape, or form, I would think. At least 2. Anyway, they have a Green Lantern core thing, which makes sense. It's a big part of the actual storyline, so that totally makes sense. That's not following it exactly. So they have everybody here. Guy Gardner was not in here, but he was the next stretch goal. They've already unlocked him, so don't worry if you don't see him there. But they have Kilowog and Sinestro and stuff like that. And one thing that's kind of interesting here is they have Kilowog here, right? They have Kilowog here, and they have a dead Kilowog here. And so it's like, if you use that hero, could you not use Kilowog there? Or is he like, there's a dead version of him with, I don't know, it seems kind of interesting. But anyway, they have the mainstays here. Jon Stewart's big, Hal Jordan's of course big. Kilowog's, I think, always pretty popular. Jessica Cruz, I know a lot of people like her, so she's there as well. So they have quite a few different ones, and of course 2 versions of Sinestro. Sadly, Sinestro does not get any yellow on his base at all, any clear yellow stuff, whereas most other people will get at least a little bit of green. But no yellow for this one, which is a little bummer, but otherwise pretty okay. But that's what a lot of people are saying there. Anyway, I think it looks pretty good. It is just more stuff. It's not necessarily adding a whole lot of new things mechanically or anything like that. Now, one thing I wanted to point out is people were talking about how this doesn't have the 2-box intro that the other one did. I suspect it's twofold. So I don't think DC allowed them to do a zombie mode where you play as the zombies. Again, they're not zombies in DCeased, but that's fine. So I think that's part of it, is that I don't think DC wanted to do that, which I fully support. I want to play as superheroes. I'm fine with that. But additionally, on top of that, is the fact that it wouldn't match the story as much. So whereas Marvel Zombies, it definitely shows a lot of the zombie side of things. And this one, it's 100% still hero-based, fighting against fallen heroes that are now zombies, plus the rest of the world and trying to save the world and stuff like that. It's still very much a superhero story, as opposed to a Robert Kirkman, The Walking Dead, but in Marvel Universe, which is how Marvel Zombies is. So very different feels to the different things. So what if matched the IP? And I think the IP holder themselves also didn't want them to do that, because they're including stuff that isn't in the comics, which is fine. It still fits the IP, but playing as zombies wouldn't. And so it is a little bit more smaller because of that, right? They weren't able to do a whole big box expansion like they would have otherwise. And so it's just a little bit more smaller scale. And of course, Marvel's way more popular than DC when it comes to mass market. So there's that as well. All right, moving on from that, we got Singularity, and they added Madara characters. If you didn't know, one of the main artists of Madara is also the artist for Singularity. I didn't know this, but they're also both in Salt Lake City. That's pretty cool. But they've added Nightingale here. They've added Zeke. They've added Rook. and they've added Remy. So they're all just replaced things. So it's not like it's any added like scope creep or anything like that. It's just essentially an art swap, which is kind of cool to see that happen. But they swapped them with people that kind of makes sense. So if we go back to the project here, you can kind of take a look at them a little bit. 158,000 raised, almost 1,000 backers, so they're doing quite good with that. And so 17 days ago, which is pretty impressive. I know I reviewed it. I know Lige reviewed it. I don't know if anybody else did, but very, very popular. I think Alex from Board Game Co. said he hasn't played it yet, but he plans to. So maybe he'll be able to share his thoughts at some point within 17 days, just so people know what he has to say, because I know a lot of people are interested in that, and he's played a lot of games, so he can have some insight into that. It has no randomness at all besides what the other player does. You can't obviously predict what their choices are, but you're not rolling any dice, you're not drawing any cards, you perfectly craft your deck. I think one thing that could improve it a little bit is a little bit more cards. Obviously, variety is the spice of life for these, and shipping prices are a little high. But this Architects Edition is pretty darn sweet. It keeps the neoprene mats in there, pre-made decks, stores all the cards. Definitely looks very, very cool. It is at $175 there. The base game $55, I think that's an easy one, right? I think that's a very good value. That's pretty much what I have in my prototype. I could easily see myself spending $55 on that. But of course, people want more, right? People want more. As you can see, I'm at the $175. I got $5 off because I followed it earlier. So that's definitely what I'm at there. And as you can see, again, stretch pay, this $30 a month, so you can get it, right? That's a big thing. And then, of course, all the different expansions. They've been doing add-ons and stuff like that, or sorry, not add-ons, but stretch goals. And they've been adding new cards and stuff like that, thicker playmats, just upgrading components and whatnot, which is pretty cool. Their shipping, I wanted to show that to you just because I know it is pretty high for a lot of people, and they've been kind of focused on that. If we go to production and shipping here, you can see here the shipping for the Architects Edition, which is that big box. It is a pretty big box. $40 to the US, and that's one of the nicest ones. It gets crazy expensive for people like in Alaska. Why $140? Pretty much just not a thing, right? You definitely don't want that. That's pretty wild. Whereas the Core Edition, as you can see, isn't like too much different, but that just scales up and up and up, right? Hopefully they can make that a little bit nicer for people, but yeah, great game. I really enjoyed it. Perseverance, Castaway Chronicles, episode 3 and 4. The people that are backing this, very interesting to see. I'll point that out. 631,000 raised, 3,376 backers, and 3 days left to go. So again, this is probably the last time I'm going to mention it in a news video. If I do at all, it'll be like last 24 hours for you guys. So it'll be really close. If you didn't know, they've already done 1 and 2, so this is now 3 and 4, but you can still get them the same. They can play standalone or they can play in like sequential, but each one plays a little bit different while keeping similar core mechanics, right? And so you can maybe like one more than the other and stuff like that. That's totally a thing. If you go down to rewards here, you're going to see 1,000 people have backed the standalone version. In other words, I'm just getting episode 3 and 4 by themselves. And then 1,800, so almost double, but not quite, but still a huge amount, are getting the expansion. In other words, I have 1 and 2, I'm wanting to add 3 and 4. So it's very interesting to see. The focus is definitely on the 3 to 4 here. If you go to like the expansion all-in, where people who are new, right, they're not really backing this. Right? Even this one, the all-in, they're not really backing this. People that are new are just getting the standalone one. I think that's kind of interesting. I don't know if it's because they played 1 and 2 and then sold it, and now are getting 3 and 4 and needed standalone because they sold the 1 and 2, or because new people just aren't wanting to go all in on it and instead wanting to do 3 and 4. I suspect they're not wanting to go all in on it because one thing they don't really do on this page very well is explain what 1 and 2 were like, what 1 and 2 are. And I think if they did that more, it might drive more people to want to get to the past stuff and not just the new stuff. So very interesting there. But either way, it's definitely not a game that I would naturally drift to. It's very Euro-y in my eyes, but I know a lot of you guys are going to love it. I know obviously people are interested in it. I think that's great, and they're definitely being very successful in Mind Clash games and doing a good job when it comes to delivering their product and then making the next campaign and following that kind of route. Okay, at time of recording, 10,638 of you have already signed up, and again, I'm interested. I haven't done it, right? I don't tend to click notify me on launch. I just tend to naturally look at Kickstarter anyway because I run this silly channel. Horizon Forbidden West Seeds of Rebellion by Steamforged Games is coming out. By the time you see this video, if it's not live yet, it will be soon. So again, link down description below to all these. Obviously, my next news video will cover this and what's going on with it. One of the interesting things about this one is, unlike the first one, this one is a lot more narrative driven. In other words, it's exactly what I said the first one should have been. I did not back the first one because of that reason, because I felt that the IP, Horizon, is very focused on the story and not just the kind of, random scenario-based kind of stuff that they were doing. So I'm really happy to see that with Forbidden West, at least, they're really focusing on the story a little bit more. I think that's good. I think SFG has a tendency to make okay first versions of games, but then really improve them later. I have Resident Evil right down there. That's the third one they've done, and I think it looks by far the best one they've done. Whereas the first one probably wouldn't be one I would have backed. So it's kind of interesting to see them improve over time in their systems. So what I'm saying is I'm interested in this one. I think this one looks pretty good. Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea. This, again, will be live shortly after I post this video, or, again, right after I do. At time of recording, it's going to be 11 hours from now, so pretty darn close to it. The first day, the follow-along, you get this guy here. For the most part, it's just showing off more of this game. They have pre-painted minis as an option, which is pretty cool. They have obviously really cool flying guys here and stuff like that, which is a lot of fun. They have their expansion that like adds a little thing there, which is cool. They do have a 30% off all in if you get everything, and as you can see, it's a lot. This is several campaigns into this, so they have quite a bit. Best price. So yeah, definitely, do that stretch pay and all that kind of stuff that you can do. So a lot of people are really into that. It does come with a lot of minis. It's an old style game in that sense, right? You're going to get 12 copies of these guys, for instance, and then 5 of these guys. So you get a lot of repeat units, right? Very much in that Zombicide-esque kind of stuff. And then obviously all your towers and ships and stuff like that, which are pretty darn cool. This is not a game I've gotten into personally, but I know a lot of people really do love it. And so that's cool. They're doing that. They're very miniature focused. They have the painted miniatures, obviously. They have a whole bunch of miniatures that they keep copy-wise. But even if you go to like their add-ons, I'm going to scroll down here real quick. Even if you go to their add-ons, they list it based off of how many miniatures that they add, which is kind of interesting. Additionally, they have new stuff coming in. So if you go to their all-new content, you're going to see they have the Two Worlds game mat. So giant neoprene stitched mat, which is very nice. They have the Events of Ogmore. I hope I'm saying that right, or at least closest. They have a Battle Booster Pack that includes Ambush, Mystic, and Heroic type cards that are kind of unique to it, which sounds pretty neat. And they have a free companion app. It says that they're introducing it. I don't believe it's available yet. The comments are saying that it wasn't, at least. But anyway, yeah, if you've ever been interested in this in the past, it is now available. Food Chain Magnate Special Edition. Again, 20,000 people are signed up for this. So it looks like it's going to be big. You can see stretch pay right there on the corner there. So it's probably going to be kind of expensive. They don't put that on cheap ones. It's very premium, right? The special edition you can read as like premium edition. It's going to be big. This is by Lucky Duck Games. This is kind of their next thing they're doing. A lot of people, my understanding is, have loved this game, and that's once it's going to be bigger, literally, and better. They're increasing by 25% size-wise, and then adding a whole lot of 3D tokens and stuff like that, just making it the nicest version game you could ever play, which is pretty darn cool. I appreciate that. I think that's great. Multi-layer stuff, even the money, it feels kind of like fabric even, so they've even kept the paper money, but then really kind of changed how it feels and stuff, which I think is pretty darn cool. The 25% bigger, I'm not necessarily sold on. I've been playing Chronicles of Drunagar Apocalypse, as you can see, and it takes up a huge amount of space. It's taking up both game tables pretty much to easily like get new units and stuff like that out. So I like big games, but I don't know if you need to purposely make them bigger on purpose. Nemesis Retaliation. 2 days left. My next news video will cover the launch of this one, so stay tuned for that. Again, subscribe if you have not. I am trying to help you guys, so all these videos hopefully you find helpful in some way, shape, or form to be more informed, to be better backers, so you get games that are a good fit for you and you're happy with it. That's the goal. And so if I can help you with that, I would love to. And part of that is covering games like Nemesis Retaliation, which a lot of people are interested in. As you can see, 58,000 people have been following this. I will say, and I meant to say this on the other ones as well, I have yet to see a strong follow to backer correlation at all. Or I guess I should say causation, really. Sometimes it matches. Like I know Darkest Dungeon did really good with the signups on Kickstarter and then converting those to sales. But I've seen Playing on GameFound that don't, where they have like a bajillion people following and then less than like a sixth or an eighth of that end up backing. I think it depends on how much you share. They're doing it really good. Awakened Realms has shared quite a bit, but they shared over time. They had a lot of backers, a lot of followers that may have not checked up since they've actually added information on here, because they added a lot of information, including price. I think that's important. If you want a strong follower thing, they need to know what they're getting into, because often I feel they're interested, they click it, but then they see the price and they nope out, because it's freaking expensive these days, especially with shipping and stuff. So anyway, I've covered all of this several times before. I went through the whole page, actually, I think last time I showed this off, but that will be coming up next. So just know when you're backing stuff, this is still coming. Next up, Mythic Battles Ragnarok. It's delivering. That's exciting. It's pretty much delivering everywhere. Australia has already started delivery, or will start delivery before end of month. North America, they're going to be the United States. All containers landed. South America, deliveries have begun. VFI Asia is about to begin for the Asia and Brazil location. In Europe, they dropped a whole thing by a crane, but only 8 copies were destroyed. So ideally, they shipped more than was necessarily needed, so they should be pretty good there. A whole container fell, which is crazy, and there are some withholding in customs, but once they get through that, which I'm sure they will, then they'll be good there. Otherwise, Mythic Battles Pantheon is also going to be going, so they're definitely delivering it, looking good there. I'm excited to show this off for you guys again. I love the system. We're big fans. I love the Norse mythology. My wife loves Egyptian mythology, which is coming up next. So obviously we're pretty invested in Mythic Battles at this point. We already have a lot of stuff, and we're going to have more. One more update for you guys. Ultracryl, or Ultracryl. If I say Ultra, I think it's Ultracryl. I don't know. I'm adding an extra A in there when I don't think there is, because that's acryl for like acrylic. So maybe it's Ultracryl. I don't know what it is. I don't know what 10001 Labs UG is doing here. What they are doing actually is this. So note, by the way, again, they had about 2,000 backers. They raised about 248,000 euro. That's nice, but it's not like it's like everything. And they bought a whole new office. It's an older one, so they got to touch it up a little bit. They're going to seal the floor, do all that. They also got this nice fancy machine to actually make stuff. What I wanted to point out here is I don't think they're doing anything wrong here per se. I know a lot of companies, I don't think they are. I know a lot of companies, especially like early on, they get the crowdfunded money all at once and they're like, wow, I have so much extra. We can buy an office and hire 15 people and do all this stuff, and then blow it when they realize, oh, I still need to fund this game, actually make it, and I don't pay for that manufacturing price for another 3 years or whatever it takes, right? So they make a lot of mistakes. I don't think they're doing it here, but what I will say is that when it comes to business, and especially their business, you can't just view it in some microcosm of one thing, right? 1001 Labs wants to make a company that sells these, and the crowdfunded campaign launches that, which means they need to be able to have an office to actually make stuff with the assumption that sales continue, right? I mean, that's just how that works. Now, that assumption is an assumption. It's a risk. They could not. And if they can't, then you get a little dicey. So I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying that when you see a company investing in its future with crowdfunded money, it is on the bet that that future works out, right? And obviously, if it doesn't, there can be issues that come here. Again, I don't think this is going to happen here. I think they have a good product. I think a lot of people are going to like it, especially as they get it. From what I saw, it looked really great. And they're being smart by, buying a little bit of an older one, a little fix-me-up one, right? That's a little bit nicer. And then making sure that, well, we need the space and we need the machine. And then we can actually make product and deliver it. And it's how they're delivering it anyway, which at that point kind of saves a lot on manufacturing too, instead of going overseas for it and stuff like that. So that's also kind of nice. Guys, that's it. That's all I had for today's news video. Again, there's plenty more out there. There's a ton of links down in the description below. I try not to cover the same games every single video, so there's tons that are there right now that I've covered in the past. I didn't cover in this one. Those links, of course, are in the description below. Feel free to use those. Guys, we have a great rest of your day. I'll tell you guys in really soon about Nemesis, Retaliation, all that fun stuff. in a little bit. So stay tuned for that. Subscribe if you have not, and have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye, guys.